to the Rant Live.
Welcome to Le Coup de Gueule, which I'm shocking Evan with this news that I'm in France, so that's the rant in French. I actually looked it up.
Sacre bleu.
I looked it up on my Google Translate. I try to use that as much as possible and not be one of those people who just completely speaks American or English. But at some point, it becomes very difficult.
I ain't going over there speaking just American. I'm gonna learn me how them frogs talk.
Try to avoid that. And something that's not very American is, it is American and it's not. Is I have this Coke, but look, it's the tiniest little thing.
It's a tiny little Coke. Oh my God, it gets smaller. It's like an optical illusion. Because when you have it, seriously, the farther you bring it back, like it does, it just absolutely shrinks. When you had it there, I was like, oh, it's like the one that the 333 milliliters. Like how many milliliters is that? Like 150?
150.
Boom!
Wow. It's like Are you French?
Hell yeah, man. I know the imperial system or whatever the hell it's.
That's a metric. We're the U.S. is on the
We're imperial. They're metric. See, I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about.
I had this conversation with a Dutch guy yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Did he dip his French fries in mayo?
He didn't, but I actually love French fries and mayo. Just a side note. But
what about the Royale with cheese?
Have not been to McDonald's, although there is a Burger King just not far from here. But I don't eat Burger King in the United States. So
what do they call a Whopper in Burger King?
I don't think they carry Whoppers in Burger. I don't know.
What's a Big Mac? Still a Big Mac? Is it Le Big Mac?
Le Big Mac.
I'm just going through like all the Pulp Fiction that I know. Actually, you know what? Speaking of getting stuff to drink, I left my coffee upstairs, so I'm going to allow you to carry the show for like 30 seconds while I go and get my coffee, which I should have done before we started. So I guess for those of you who may be coming to us later in the day, which is probably going to be a very vast majority of you, we are recording this at 8 a.m. Eastern time, which is what I am on because someone is like 6 hours ahead. And so it's a little bit more difficult to find a time that syncs up. So we're doing this a little bit earlier. Pardon me, because I need to go help myself wake up a little bit. I will be back.
Okay, that's good. So all I'm doing is just trying to maintain my insanity by drinking a Coke because it's 2:00 in the afternoon here I'm in Annecy, France, which is actually just south of Geneva. So it's nice, it's very beautiful, lots of mountains and stuff. And so I am 6 hours ahead of Evan, 9 hours ahead of the Pacific time zone. And so it is 2:00. I just finished lunch a little while ago, and Evan said, hey, I could do the show at 8 a.m. So he's being a trooper, but in order to really fulfill that, he needs his coffee fix as I need my mini Coke fix. Something that I am finding, and we're going to get sidetracked just a little bit here so I can fill the air until Evan gets back. I have not seen one French flag. I mean, in the United States, you see American flags everywhere. I am now in Annecy, which is where I am. I have not seen one French flag. Not one. I look all over the place. I don't see any French flag. I am in France.
How many Gadsden flags are there?
There's none.
Well, of course not. The yellow flags with the snake. It's just don't tread on me.
So
anyway.
I thought that was interesting that there. I've literally looked for flags and I have not seen one French flag.
I don't think they fetishize it quite as much as what we do here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So just kind of.
Not that I have a problem. I mean, there's certain times it's fine, but it's like a lot of people have like 15 of them all over. But yeah. So funny. Before we get into actually anything of any importance, I'm wearing this shirt for significance because I have not been. I saw the Cubs play twice last year. Rooftops both times. Obviously, you couldn't be at Wrigley. I have seen the Cubs play this year, but in Cincinnati. I have not been to Wrigley Field yet this year. So the first time I go to Wrigley Field since 2019 is going to be tomorrow to see Guns N' Roses play at Wrigley Field. So I'm not going to a Cubs game. And now here's the other thing, though. Guns, their concert is Thursday night. Dead and Company plays Friday and Saturday. So I do not envy the groundskeepers who have got to get in there on it's Friday and Saturday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 consecutive days of concerts. Wrigley, the field is going to be a mess.
Yeah, it is.
And so, I'm not, I don't envy those folks, but I'm pretty excited. You know, I wasn't that excited for it, but I saw them here in Indianapolis last week, and it was a phenomenal show. It was great. Like, take everything you ever heard about Guns N' Roses. Like, okay, granted, Axl's voice isn't quite as good, but like he's bowing cordially after every single song. They started on time. They just play normally. He's throwing stuff into the crowd. He's talking to people nicely. He's actually admitting that he's from Indiana, which hasn't happened in like 30 years. Wow. And overall, it was just a lot of fun, right? Like because that's you know, we're not quite at the, like my son and I went to see John Fogerty earlier. Like that average crowd age was like 75 and they could barely stand for, it was okay, maybe like 50. But that's the average, you know, taking myself and other folks into account. So you're probably close to 60.
Yeah. You just added 20 years to my life.
I'm really young. But the, you know, again, Guns N' Roses, like, yeah, were there some kids who were like teenagers, college age? Yeah, but they're pretty much all it's like us, right? So like, even if you party pretty hard for that, like relative to you, the level to which you could party, like I saw one dude who almost fell in a trash can and passed out. But otherwise, it was just like, you know, everybody's enjoying the music. It was cool. It was mellow.
So there were some younger people at the show?
There were some, not many. I mean, it's mostly, again, like 30 would have been easily the young side of the spectrum, right? You're talking like 40 to 50. Because, I mean, but that's their wheelhouse, right? Like that's when they were, you know, you look at 89 to 2000-ish. And so... but I'm pretty stoked about it. Going up, our buddy Tommy, who's up there, he's going with me. I got tickets on the field, although not quite as close as I was at Pearl Jam. But it should just be fun. Like I'm just excited for it to get back there and to be like, it's Guns N' Roses at Wrigley Field. Like what the two things that when I was a kid, like in 1989, if you would have told me like you can go see these guys play at Wrigley, I'd be like, holy shit, like, will Jerome Walton be there too? Because if that's the case, it would be heaven. You know, like, but no, it should be, it should be a lot of fun, and we'll see. But
if you're there with Tommy, I mean, your seats might improve as you've seen before. It's like Tommy knows everybody in the neighborhood, so he'll just be walking into a concert and somebody will just grab you, and next thing you know, you're being swept up to the front row.
Yeah, that's how it happened with Pearl Jam. I was like, okay, I'll give you my 200 level seats in exchange for field pass wristbands. Cool. So we'll say, but I've been waiting for this concert for a year though, right? It was supposed to have been last July, so it's been more than a year. And so for a while there, I was considering not going at all. And then I finally, you know, convinced myself that like, hey, dummy, like go do something for yourself rather than just, well, it'll be a little inconvenient. You know, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Take some time off work.
Yeah. Don't give into that old people mentality. That's what happens. Like as you get older, I got a lot of friends who do that. They're like, it's just kind of easier for me just to hang out at my house.
Well, and that's really what, you know, but hey, we've gotten that way with the movies, right? Hey, you mean came out free on HBO Max? Hell yeah, I'm staying home, even though I love going to the theater, but I'm like, you mean I don't have to go anywhere? And if I got to take a leak, I can just pause the movie. Oh yeah, man. And I can grab whatever beer I want out of the fridge because they're not serving beer at my theater now like they used to. Not that I really want to pay $7 or whatever for a Two-Hearted. But still, there's a lot of nice conveniences to that. But the fact that my son's baseball practice is tonight rather than Thursday when it's normally been, and his other team got a game canceled. So I'm like, hey, nothing else going on. I'll pop up there, come back down on Friday. It'll be good. So anyway, I didn't want to bore everyone with all that, but it is at least adjacent to our interests here with the fact that it is at the friendly confines, which again is 20 years ago, not even 20. When did they start having concerts there? 5 or 10 years ago? 10? I mean, but again, like this would have been inconceivable at some point. You know, it's like a concert at Wrigley Field. What? And then you know, and then they're like, oh, we'll do 1 or 2 a year, and then it turned into like,
with the lights, right?
Yeah, like every whenever the Cubs are out of town, like how many concerts can we schedule during road trips? You know what I mean? That's really where it's gotten. But anyway,
hack the place as much as they possibly can. You see, this is what happens when you have a team that is 66 and 79 out of the playoff race. Although I have good news for everybody, and that is the Cubs mathematically cannot reach 100 losses, which was something that looked like they were predestined for.
They were well on their way for a while there, and then all of a sudden they decided to start winning baseball games, which you know is outside of that sweep. Which is, and it's kind of funny because when you think about it, like they lost 3 or 4 when they went out to San Francisco in early June. I would say that was like it was like the 3rd through the 6th, or it was somewhere in that neighborhood. I think that's right. The 5th was a Saturday, so I think that's whatever the case was, and that was you know, Jake Arrieta's infamous food poisoning game when he's like, "Well, you know, I was throwing up before." You know, Ross said he was throwing up before the game, and everybody's like, "What the hell were you even doing?" Well, we thought he could go, and he went like 2 innings and got shelled, and they lost 3 or 4. But that was that right after they had beaten the Padres 2 out of 3 out there. I think either way, it was right there at the start of June. So they're coming off that super hot May, and then it was kind of like, ugh. But then they ended up bouncing back a little bit, and they were playing pretty well through most. And it was, you know, it was June 24th when it all went to hell after they all hit the Dodgers. But that's, you know, they've dropped 6 out of 7 to San Francisco, and that San Francisco team, man. That I said this, I wrote it somewhere, and I think I said it on Twitter. They remind me of the 2015 Royals, where you just have a ton of veteran hitters who, and the Giants hit a bunch of home runs, so I don't want to take the power away from them, but like everybody up and down that lineup, you're like, even if they don't hit a home run, like these guys just know how to hit. They've seen everything. I mean, and it's wild because all these guys are having career years into their 30s, but you look at Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford and Buster Posey, who I like to call Posey Buster, or I'm sorry, Busty Poser. That's it, Busty Poser. It sounds much more fun. It sounds like a Playboy model. But you just where's the reprieve? And that's what kind of what the Cubs used to be, I guess, too, in 2016. But you look at those kind of championship, and it's the just the contact. And it's like nobody. There doesn't seem to be any egos. They just go out and they play and whatever.
And the funny thing is that, you know, while they haven't been very good recently, it's essentially the same team, except for the fact that they added Kris Bryant, which obviously is a very key piece as they go down the stretch here.
It's the same team they had in 2015. All those guys have been there for like 10 years.
It is. It's hey, somebody's right here. Is there breakfast with this episode? Hey, welcome. Our one regular viewer is with us.
Yeah, John's got a croque madame in there somewhere, maybe a croque monsieur.
Croque madame, definitely.
Yeah,
I actually had that for lunch yesterday.
See, there we go.
There was nothing else open, and so I was like, long story. But so Kris Bryant came to Wrigley Field this past weekend. The Giants swept the Cubs, which is absolutely no surprise. KB ended up going 4 for 14 with 0 extra base hits and scoring 4 runs. So I'm sure it was emotional. I mean, obviously you saw the on-field kind of the tribute that they paid to Kris Bryant before the first game, and he got emotional, and which is cool to see. I mean, just because it just kind of actually shows people that Kris Bryant really, really did care about Chicago, cared about being a Chicago Cub, in fact. And is very, very meaningful. Him and his wife bought cookies for all of the employees at Wrigley Field, which I thought was a really cool touch. So, you know, I mean, he's just a class guy. I mean, to me, probably for my entire life, the classiest Cub that I mean, obviously you've got guys like Ernie Banks, but I wasn't alive when he played. Ryan Sandberg was a pretty classy guy, but I just think that Kris Bryant, especially this day and age where you've got a lot of prima donnas, really just epitomizes like everything you really want in a baseball player. Hardworking, just a really nice person, humble, and super good. So
yeah, which is funny because he got a prima donna. There's a really I actually shared this, and it, you know, I guess I'm trying to think. Actually, Mike sent me the link to the piece, which is kind of funny. But I shared it on Twitter a couple days ago. It was Saturday or Sunday. Maybe it's, I don't know. I don't even know what the time, what day it is. But
you sound like me.
Yeah, but it was basically a rundown of like the Cubs always wanted this to be the case. Like they never actually wanted to re-sign him. They just wanted to milk the 7 years of control for as much as they possibly could. And here's the way, all the way from his draft to the service time manipulation to the things that happened along that time to, again, the leaks of, and here's what's interesting, right, is so the Cubs have never come out, like Jed Hoyer, I guess, said, hey, we had talks with all of them. And there have been, the one person reporting, it's David Kaplan. I don't need to dance around it. Cap reported that he turned down this offer, and he stood by that. He's, interestingly enough, has kind of changed a little bit, and what he shared with us when he was on the show was a little bit different from what he's presented on his own format on the Cap and Jay Hood show. And Jay Hood has said some pretty mean things about Bryant. It sounds petty to say it that way, but Bryant has steadfastly denied it the whole time. And what was interesting in this piece is it came out and said, if there really was an offer, how come no one on either side has ever actually said what the offer was? Because you'll even hear, like, outside of the one report, Hoyer's never said, hey, we offered. Actually, he said they made offers, which, again, to my knowledge, and I know this from some sources who are pretty close to the situation, there was never an offer. And again, that's the part. It's like, hey, if that was the case, let's just do that and move on. But I think he really did want to stay. Still,
and I think we should clarify. Your source is more reliable, for sure. Not even knowing who the other sources are, than any of the other sources. And
I'm pretty sure. And when but I'm pretty sure, and that's what I found in the piece. And I'll dance around it a little bit here. But I said that I felt it was ironic that Crane Kenny was one of the people who was out there. And part of the reason Crane Kenny and Jason McLeod were out there on the field to greet Bryant along with Tom Ricketts, because Jed Hoyer and David Ross were quarantined because of positive COVID tests, right? They're like Crane Kenny otherwise, but I'm like, boy, it's ironic that someone who is purported to maybe have been a source regarding the contract is one of them who's down there on the field to greet this guy. So someone who may have had a direct hand in basically ruining this guy's reputation and kind of pushing him out of town. I don't know that. That is not coming from me. That is speculation that I have heard. It's through the grapevine. It could be completely wrong. So I do want to point that out. John, your mic is shorting when you move around. I noticed that a couple times, but I've got, it's not a mic. It's like, it's the earbud thing.
Bring my whole mic. Normally I kind of have it with me when I'm traveling different places, but heavy,
but anyway, it's neither, but I guess the point of it is, and if we bring this back around to, this had to happen. The Cubs couldn't sign these guys. They were getting old, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, well, hold on. The team Bryant's playing for has like 3 dudes who are all way into their 30s, and they're all still playing well. So don't tell me that you couldn't keep these guys because they're going to get old and not be any good anymore. Like seriously, Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, Buster Posey, Posey Buster, Busty Poser, whatever you want to call them. They're all having career years. Yeah, now you're muted, by the way, because you changed your stuff. Maybe that's a better way to do it.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay.
So far.
Those guys are like, aren't they in their 40s?
Close to it. Yeah, they're like my age.
These guys
almost
have been with the Giants their whole careers, pretty much, right?
Yeah, but I'm told that you can't keep players around for their whole careers because they get old and you need to trade them.
I heard the same thing. It's weird.
But I guess, and again, it will all be fine if this stuff gets changed around and if they do rebuild this. Although now, there are all these reports coming out that not reports, it's speculation, whatever, but for multiple people. And that's where it's like, I'm not going to give Bill Dodgers, somebody whose name rhymes with Bill Dodgers, much credit here because I still don't really buy
Will Dodgers. I think.
Yeah. Phil Blodgers, and again, when you're never in the clubhouse and any of that stuff, and you're writing stuff about the team, I think it's foolish. Although I do that, but I don't speculate in the same way.
On a second.
But I'm actually, I actually, pay attention to it also. But
you try to educate yourself.
Yeah, saying they've heard that Ricketts doesn't want to spend for a few years. And then John Heyman has said something similar yesterday on Mully and Haw. And you do kind of wonder about that. And it's just that's kind of the issue. And it's like, well, if that's the case, now that could, and I don't know if we want to seg into this, but there is a way that they could still generate interest, still get someone who figures to be a really damn good player, and not have to pay that player all that much money. And I'm speaking, of course, about Mr. Brennan Davis, who, debuted at AAA yesterday, had an okay game.
Yeah, I think he had his first two at bats were pretty successful.
The second one was great because the dude came running down from the little berm to try and catch it, and just bam, right on his ass and into the fence on the backside. So, but yeah, 2 at bats, 2 homers. That's pretty good. He ended up, I think, striking out twice and flying out to center. My understanding is that the second strikeout was on a pretty poor call, which you're going to run into. But I mean, the dude showed absolutely. Actually, I shouldn't say it took him a little while to adjust at AA. He didn't get much time. He got hit in the face with a pitch earlier, and that's why he started out at South Bend. Promoted quickly. I think he was only batting like 175 through 40 at bats at AA. And ended up batting 250 something. So I mean, once he figured it out, it all clicked. And then he immediately steps into AAA. Like I just think, again, the obvious talent is there. He's going to be able to make up for some overall lost developmental time because of the fact that he is such a great athlete. And it's wild to me. He's got that 2-handed swing and such a short finish. It looks so funny.
It's such a trip to see how he gets so much power in that.
Yeah.
Because you're like Kris Bryant, perfect example. Guy who just swings all the way through,
Yeah. He's got the long, and Bryant's got the long one-hand finich too. So like when I swing with 2 hands. My son swings with one. I'm one-handed. I have a one-hand finish. My son swings 2-handed. And Mike Trout does. I mean, there's a lot of people that do. Bryant notably actually did switch to a 2-hand finish when he hurt the shoulder a few years ago. So he had to make some changes to that. But not only that, like Davis's swing actually looks like what you would teach to intentionally go oppo, because it's a quick stroke through the ball. You want to get the hands out in front of the barrel of the bat and finish short, kind of a quick short finish, because you are trying to shoot it. If I were trying to hit behind a runner, if I'm right-handed and I got a runner at first or second, and I'm trying to hit behind him out to right to advance him over, that's what it would look like, except he's able to pull power, to generate pull power with that same. And I think a lot of it is just he is so athletic and so quick through the zone with the bat that really at that point, like the finish, it's enough to certainly get through it, but it just looks so effortless. And I think that's where, and the Cubs have cleaned up a bunch of things, and he's been able to adjust very, very quickly to the new thing to clean up what were some sloppier mechanics early on. So, I mean, again, this kid is the goods. He's very much legit. Now, the problem is that, they wanted to hold back Bryant for service time. And where do they, I'm interested to see how this works, because in that case, you could understand from the business side, and then you say, hey, 11 games, we're not hurting ourselves competitively, because they thought they could be at least moderately good in 15 and certainly very good over those next couple of years. Do they feel, because if they believe next year is going to be another tank year, what do they do with Davidson? Do they bring him up and have him? Now, part of that should say, well, we're not going to sign anybody any good, so we can let him come up and have more of an impact. But if you also if you say you're trying to compete right away, that's bullshit.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I just think that he's mashing, obviously, and I think that if you leave him in AAA for an entire year next year, what he's gonna, it may stunt his development.
Yeah, well, it's no like yet again, what are you saying, right? To other, let's look around. Let's look at a couple different factors. One, they've already kind of screwed the pooch when it comes to free agents in the future. You traded off all these guys. You're nowhere near as desirable location as what you were in 16. Right, 16 was like everybody knew the Cubs were on the come, that they were going to be the team. Then you're talking about Lackey and Zobrist and Hayward and guys like that, which, again, we've talked about the Hayward thing, but the fact that those guys wanted to come play there, like John Lester kind of set that tone. But now you're non-tendering Kyle Schwarber, who is doing awesome. You couldn't find $5 million for Lester. You've traded all these other guys away. You now may need to pay a premium, or at least pay on par with everyone else, to get players to come there. And if you're taking a guy now, the CBA may dictate things differently, right? We know that they're going to try to do some things that change the service time and how that works. That could dictate what happens with Davis, certainly. But if you keep him down, which clearly, like, I get it, it's just one game, but he clearly was better. I mean, he was doing so well at Double-A. You knew he was ready for that next level. He's going to be ready to go. I think he'll be fine in the majors next year. But if you keep him down and say, well, we need to get him, he missed 2020. He didn't play baseball exclusively in high school. We think he needs more time. And
the level of competition in AAA is not necessarily better than the level of competition in Double-A.
It's not. There's more raw talent at Double-A than there is at Triple. You generally have a bunch of those quad A type players. You've got guys who are biding their time till maybe they can get another deal. In a lot, not all cases, but the jump from Double-A to the majors is not necessarily as great as what one would think, to where you need to see. Now, you do have a bunch of guys who throw all kinds of junk in AAA, just absolutely trying to, work through. So that's fine. And they do have major league experience, so the pitchability is there. But again, if they sit him for an extended period of time, or if they try to do the service time manipulation thing, well, now you're talking about further pissing off agents, other young players who might be coming up and seeing that happen, and now you're going to draft them. Now are you costing yourself in terms of your draft slot, bonuses, things? There's a lot that goes in there, and a lot of it people don't care about, outside of a select few of us who follow this stuff way too intently. But that if we're looking at, and I guess back to my original point, if they're saying, hey, we're not going to sign any big free agents, but here's the deal. You need to fill up Wrigley Field, because I can guarantee you there's going to be a shit ton more people there tomorrow. Part of it's because you got field seating than what you're seeing at these games. Like, there's not a lot of people in the stands, right?
Well, and you had written about the fact that, is this the Ricketts trying to be more profitable, or is this the Ricketts not being able to afford to field a team because they've got so much debt and everything that happened with COVID and that impacted obviously not just the Cubs, but the hotel on the corner and all the other business interests they have around the park, for which they've got a tremendous amount of debt. And so where they've spoken for years about trying to keep those things separate, it's impossible to do. You can't.
Right. Well, and they've admitted they're not separate later. Like first they said they were separate and that they didn't impact one another, and that if the business side, we're not going to use the Cubs to finance this other side. I'm like, I don't know, man, because you said that if you got profits over this other side, they'd go to feed the ball club. So don't tell me it doesn't work both ways. Like, that's not a one-way street.
They can't even think about, the fact that they might be in a position to lose money. And so it's like, I mean, obviously you could never conceptualize what's happened with COVID and everything like that. I get that. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's just like, for people who are billionaires to not have any real kind of way to deal with this situation, it's mind-boggling, to be honest with you.
I mean, I got to think
it's very rewarding when your father is a billionaire, and
I got to think that if they were of the mind to do so, they could get a fairly low interest loan to be able to cover some of that stuff in the meantime, if they had to, given the assets that they've got in place, unless they're over leveraged so far that their assets don't even match up to what they've got in debt well enough that they can take on any more of it. But and they've said too, like, as long as they're basically at 50% capacity, they're breaking even. But you don't want to break even. That's not really the way it should work. And if you go into another year, if they don't go after any marquee, I guess pun intended, free agents, we've seen what's happening. If you don't go out there and play winning baseball, I mean, if they're just a mediocre team, like, not only mediocre, but and for a while there, the 2015 team was fairly middling, right? And again, up until July 29th, they got no hit by Cole Hamels. At that point, it was kind of like, okay, cool. They'll mail it in the rest of the year. They'll be like a 500 team. No big deal. That's fine, because that's all you expect. And then they caught fire. And then that changed things immeasurably. I mean, the place was completely full, everything else. But if you go in and you kind of, again, they just won last night. They won 7 games in a row and 8 out of 10, and that's really fun. But if you say, well, hey, this team full of nobodies is doing pretty well, let's see what they do given a whole year. Well, then if you don't start addressing any of those holes,
that's not going to play.
Right. It definitely won't, because there are still some very obvious, like they're doing it because the bullpen. Shout out to friend of the program, Scotty Efros, for just coming up and shoving. And last night, 1, 2, 3, 2 strikes, struck out Bryce Harper, and ended up with 10 pitches to get through the inning, which is awesome. But it's just it's like you need that starting rotation is hot trash right now. Like it is bad. If Kyle Hendricks is your number one, the way
except
he's
for Alec Mills. Alec Mills is really the only.
Another friend of the program, of course. I think there's a theme here.
You come on the program, things are going to work out for you.
But it is not going to work the way they've got it. And, God bless him, Patrick Wisdom, with his, team rookie record, 26 home runs. But he's striking out 40% of the time. Like, there are some things with this. And, he's 30 years old. And Frank Schwindel's like 31 years old. And his whole family came over from Jersey yesterday, since he was in Philly. And, I don't know, man. Like, there are some fun players there, but part of the reason they're so fun and part of the reason we're able to enjoy this as much as we are is because we know the team sucks so much ass that you've got nothing else to cheer for. But if you say, this is a team we're rolling with all year, not because we traded away a bunch of superstars, it's because this is the team we're going to field for the season. And that, not only would that be disappointing, but it's also, again, and I've mentioned this, I think I've mentioned it on here, I've written about it a couple times, is that it's not like they went through 15 and it was a total surprise and then they added pieces. Like, they went out and got John Lester. Like, that was a big move. I mean, you're talking about the premier starting pitcher of that market and a guy who had won titles in Boston, who was very highly revered among his peers. And as much as starting to win in 2015, having John Lester there as someone who said, I believe what you're trying to do here, that was huge for them. And so then they were able to add those other pieces. And so what, I totally get, if you don't go out and try to get, Carlos Correa and Max Scherzer and, insert here, like, if you don't go get 3 top tier free agents, I totally understand that, but you need at least one top tier kind of guy and then maybe another role player type dude to figure that out. Because again, as I was going through it, and I wrote this yesterday, it's still shocking. The only position player to whom they have given a multi-year guarantee since Jason Hayward is Daniel Descalso. The biggest free agent contract they've given to other than Hayward in that time, or since actually it was 2017. So since 2017, if we take out Hayward, the next highest was John Jay for $8 million.
Yeah.
And then Jock Peterson for $7 million. They have not added any position players.
Here's the deal. The Cubs have their financial projections and they've got revenue projections. That's for sure. And so they have revenue projections of if Wrigley Field is full, and they have revenue projections everywhere between, down on half full, quarter full, you name it. But they've got to be able to take that revenue and cover their costs. And I think that's the way they're truly looking at this as a business. Yeah. I think. And the thing is that they've gotten themselves into a position where they're definitely, I'd be shocked if they were making the revenue right now to be able to cover, their expenses. And it's a trickle down effect, right? Because if the Cubs aren't good and people aren't filling up Wrigley, well, then the hotel's not full either, because that hotel services Wrigley Field. I mean, there's really nothing else going on in the area to make people want to come and stay at that hotel. So it's like part and parcel of the whole same thing. It's just, you can't really get away from if there's not a good team. And so that's where it's like, what are they going to do? They're not going to go out and spend money. There's just no way. There's no way on earth. What they want to do is they want to bring in the cheapest players that they possibly can bring in. They're going to try to develop as quickly as they possibly can develop. Brennan Davis will be up next year at some point. I'm sure they'll try to manipulate his service time, and that's what the approach is going to be. I mean, I don't see any other way around it. I mean, I'd be really shocked if the Ricketts family just decided to bring in Carlos Correa and some big names. It's not going to happen.
Well, and keep in mind that they could bring in a big time free agent, a couple more role players. You get your arbitration eligible guys. You bring back your, Schwindel and Ortega and all these. And guess what? You're still under $100 million payroll because right now they've only got $39.8 million committed to guaranteed contracts. That's going to go up with our Beals, Wilson Contreras, Ian Happ, those guys. And then, if you have a couple of options to get picked up, but then you're still only talking about maybe $60 million or something, right? You could add another $40 million in free agents, which is it's not great. But I mean, if you look at a guy who's $25 million a year and one who's 10 and one who's 5, all right, there's 3 solid free agents, one really good one, two pretty decent ones. And you're still only at $100 million payroll, which is $50 million less than this year, which is $50 million less than the year before, which is $20 million less than the year before that. So you're less than half of where you were in 2018 or whatever it was when they were at like $220 million. And you could do that. And now you're talking about like, hey, we're way less money than we were. Now, the Cubs should never, ever, ever, ever be at only $150 million or $100 million. They shouldn't even be at 150. There's no reason for them not to be somewhat close to whatever the luxury tax threshold is every year. I'm not saying they got to go over every year. If that's
unless you've mismanaged,
right?
Unless you've mismanaged things, and
right.
So that's where the problem is. So I think, listen, I think and we're never going to know if this happens because it's a private entity. All Major League Baseball teams are private. Antitrust exemption.
Except that, the Braves are owned by a publicly traded company, so we do get to see the Braves books. And
so you've got one team, but at the end of the day, Ricketts' family could sell, and I assume that they're going to want to or need to at some point.
Yeah, if you can't afford more than $100 million payroll, why not just sell and get out of it?
Not the whole team though. They can sell a portion of it. I mean, I don't know how much they own. To be honest with you, it's not 100%, but I think it's a big chunk of it. We don't know. We don't get access to that information. So they might own 90%. They might own 80%. But at the end of the day, if they wanted to raise money, they could sell a portion of the team. No one would ever find out because it's not public information. And to me, that's the only way, if they're in a situation where they've got a debt load they can't manage, for them to get out of that situation.
Well, if the team is worth $3 billion, you could sell 10% of it and get $300 million. And there you go. Now you've covered payroll for the, but yeah, it's a weird situation. But again, they don't even have to go. And I think this is where I come down to it. If they wanted to stair step that back up, right? You say, we don't have $200 million worth of liquidity. We can't make that work. 125 million would actually get you to where you've added some significant pieces, and you can see what you've got with some of the guys who are still there. You can feel that stuff out, find out, and then the following year, again, if you brought people back to the ballpark, you've got another full season again. Then you sort of figure out again where you can go and where you can fit in those pieces. So I don't think it's one of those where they just try to immediately become competitive next year. I don't think it's something where they go spend all the way up to $200 million again. But I do, just because of the necessity, they're going to have to add players. Like they have to add people.
They have to have at least 26 players.
Yeah, that's the way it's going to be. And so it'll be interesting again to see that. So hopefully,
I wonder if they're going for the feel good story next year, which would be, they bring this motley crew cast of characters together and hope they, kind of find lightning in a bottle. And if that happens, Cubs fans will eat that up.
Yeah.
And then everything
for a while, because it's like they kind of eat it up now, but there's nobody showing up. I mean, it was already starting to fade before that because they were losing games even when you had all those players there.
They are filling over 50%. I mean, they're announcing 26,000 things like that.
But here's the issue. And then part of that, though, part of the reason they're doing that, though, is because people can go buy tickets for $10 on the secondary market. Because season ticket holders are getting screwed. And because they paid X amount and now they're selling those tickets off at a loss or literally just giving them away because StubHub, as you well know, and we don't need to fight with them anymore. But, there's no reason to even sell on StubHub because if you're only going to get $10 for it, they're going to take out your fees. And it's like, it wasn't even worth my time. So they're just giving tickets away. So the issue becomes, if you're going to give me, and this is like the 50th time, so I apologize again, but if you're going to say, We're still going to charge you $11 for beer. We're still going to charge you a minimum $50 to get in the gate, if not more, at least for your season tickets. We're still going to make all these fees just as high as they are, but we're going to give you a crappy product for less than $100 million payroll. Well, hold on there, buddy. Like my nostalgia is not costing me to pay that much.
And I've seen some people, it's like this, the excitement that gets generated when you get called after being number 26,000 just a month ago.
Which is such a bullshit number.
And
anyway.
I've seen people on Facebook ask questions. Hey, I got called. I can't believe I got called. Should I buy tickets? It's like the fact that they're even contemplating buying tickets and spending, thousands and thousands of dollars to get in a situation that you and I got out of because we got rid of thank God, we got rid of our season tickets.
Because of the hell of a because we can go buy tickets for $20 now to a game if we wanted to.
Less than that, they're like $6.
Really good ones. Well, yeah, you get $6 bleacher tickets at some point. You know what I mean? Like that's wild.
$6.
But if you're gonna charge me as much money as what they're charging up front, so you can get it on the back end, but that's the only reason it's half full is because people are buying tickets on StubHub for so cheap. If you had only a primary market, it would not be that full because people are just like, screw it. I've been to see this team 30 times already. I don't want any more of this. So again, I think but do they want to, again, as you said, their financial projections are based around a certain modeling. Do they want to say, well, hey, we're going to reduce ticket prices by 10% and thereby reduce our revenue by at least 10%? Because if we're still only at half capacity or 60% or whatever, at a lower ticket price, well, that's no good. But it
depends on how much revenue they produce day of game, which and this is the tricky thing about how everything has worked out and kind of ironic actually is that, when they were in COVID and they were crying poor and saying, how much of their game day revenues is, I think they said 70% of their revenue was from game day. And so you can't backtrack on that. You can't say that when things are going bad and then backtrack and say that that's not true. So to fill the stadium
wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah. So you would think that if that's true, then you're right. Lowering ticket prices would be the way to go because then you'd still get that game day revenue. And if that makes up 70% of your overall revenue, then you just need people in the stands. And oh, by the way, in the hotel across the street, in the restaurants across the street, and in all the other things, you just need people there.
Right. Well, I think what they're seeing is these last couple of years, this one in particular. Last year, I guess we had to take out, but this year in particular, they're starting to see they've stretched their price elasticity to its breaking point, and I think they're starting to see that because they're hemorrhaging season ticket holders. That's the thing. We could talk about capacity. We could talk about how many people are there, but what they really depend on is season ticket holders because that gives you your baseline revenue. That is money that you have collected up front. You've got it. You don't give a shit what happens on StubHub after the fact because you've already made that money up front. But if you're losing season ticket holders and then having a hard time making up that many, and again, we're not talking about people who've got season tickets in the upper deck. We're talking about all these premium club experiences that they've added in there. The 1914 Club, Maker's Mark Barrel Room, Catalina Club, what have you, that the average price is so much higher for. A lot of these people might be saying, and maybe they're still fine. Maybe businesses are still willing to do that. They get the tax write-off, whatever. But if you're losing those ticket holders at a rate higher than what you're bringing on new ones with a product that's inferior, that's where you get the issue. And so, again, it's we could talk about capacity all day because you could look at it and say, well, there's nobody there. Well, it doesn't matter because if you had 40,000 season ticket holders, they don't give a shit how many people are there. They've sold all those tickets already. They're good. Yeah. They don't care how many people. But now, if you don't have people there, you're not generating the concessions and so forth. So I get that. But the fixed revenue part of it is really what they need to drive. And that's what you do by actually having a good product that people are willing to pay thousands of dollars for in December and January rather than, in June and July. So anyway, that's
the problem with what you just said is that logic dictates exactly what you just stated. Any person with any understanding of business would completely agree with what you just said. The problem is that what we hear from the Cubs is not that. And so it's just, and that's where it's like, especially over this past year or so, where, and the things that Crane Kenny says make no sense whatsoever. They're unverifiable. And so it's just like, you've got this private business, you have this antitrust exemption. You just say whatever you want to say about, how things are going and where you get your money from and all these other things. But at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, they've got to sell those season tickets. I mean, logically, you would think that that is what they would need to do. That brings an influx of money in at the very beginning before season's even started, before you've taken on any costs, you've got cash. And so any business wants to do that. They want to get cash as quickly as they possibly can, preferably before they have to pay out their expenses. So what you said makes total sense.
Yeah. But as we've seen in the past, they set their budget like right at the end of the season. So Jed will get a budget, right? Because you got to have it before free agency. You've got to know what your budget is. So he'll get that in late October, early November. Now, we've seen several times in the past that Ricketts has expanded that budget at times, and that will perhaps happen. I mean, we saw it this year yet, but in January when the vaccine news started coming out, like literally the same day. And I'm sure he knew about it before we did publicly, that now they had money in the budget that they could sign Jake Arrieta, they could sign Jock Peterson. So there are some changes that could happen. Of course, at that point, if we're talking about mid-January or early February, well, most of the big time free agents they've already signed. So that some of them maybe hang around.
Yeah, I mean, and that Jake Arrieta thing worked out real well, didn't it?
Yeah,
I think Jake Arrieta is
awesome.
like on a bus stop bench somewhere in Chicago, just kind of mumbling to himself.
Complaining about his hamstring. But the issue though is, so now you've got, you're hemorrhaging season ticket holders. Now you're setting a budget before you know about renewals and exactly how that's all going to work. So it's, as much as they say it's going to be this fix, I think there's a bunch of things there that in order to have the budget they would need to really play at the high end of the free agent market in a meaningful way, Hoyer would have to be given a budget that is based very much on faith that he can go get the right guys and they'll be competitive. I don't think that'll happen this year. I do think that they can establish enough of a budget that'll allow him to be active in free agency simply because they have to, because they have so little money still on the books. But there's no way they're going to be able to commit a big enough budget, again, that'll see them get above $150 million. I'd be shocked, absolutely shocked, if they were at anywhere close to $150 million for next year. And that could increase. But again, you're talking about basically adding $100 million, 90 to 100 in free agency. I just don't see that happening. But hey, who knows? It's all kinds of wild stuff could go on with between now and spring training.
I'm going to predict that the average age of the Chicago Cubs next year is going to be over 30.
I think I'll take the under, but not by a great deal, because I think if they keep all these guys around, it's going to be.
Oh, they're keeping.
Well, yeah, but of course they are. Yeah, everybody's. Why you dream big? I'm not here to dream. Dreams don't pay my bills. It's
Your dreams pay my bills.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can keep dreaming all you want, man, and then read about what's going to happen with those dreams, and then click on all the ads along the way. That'll help my dream. No, but I jest sort of. It's all right. We're responding to live comments. For those of you who aren't, I always forget that people aren't all watching this. So,
it's like and logic. So we've got these comments, people saying the latest ones, why can't we add 90 million? It's like all this logical stuff is great. It's basically what we've been talking about is yes, logically, if you apply business principles to the situation and all these different things make sense. The problem is that there is no real logic, because we don't get the real story. We get kind of a diluted version of the story that the Ricketts family believes Cubs fans need to be able to increase their revenue. I mean, that's their goal here is that they are solely interested in driving as much revenue as possible from this. And it's different than every other Major League Baseball team is totally different in that respect. I mean, some people are in it because they want to make money. Some people are in it because they want to prove something, like Tom Ricketts, for example. He wants to prove to his dad that he can run a multi-billion-dollar company and make a profit from it. And that is exactly what he's trying to do. He's never going to tell you that, but it's quite obvious that's the situation if you look at all the facts. And so
the goal is to increase the asset. That's, at the end of the day, that's what it is.
And that's happened on its own, really, right? Just through the market for MLB teams.
And so really what it is then is it's like, again, owning a home. Provided I keep paying my mortgage, as things go, the value of my home should increase, provided there's not some kind of a weird bubble that bursts. And I didn't have to do anything about it. I just had to keep the home from falling apart. Like, make sure the furnace doesn't explode or the water heater doesn't leak everywhere. Like, all I've got to do is maintain things, mow my yard. That's easy, right? I don't need to add a bunch of shit to it. And now they've added a bunch of shit to Wrigley, all that. But like, they don't. But that's different. That's improving the asset. They don't need to field a really high payroll because that really doesn't have much to do with the asset itself, right? That's the day-to-day stuff. That's cool. That's buying a new grill. Oh, I got a big green egg. Well, shit. Or instead of buying a big green egg, I could just go buy the Weber kettle grill. Oh, okay. Still cook, still put charcoal on it, still make food. You know what I mean? And it doesn't really improve the actual asset value. So at the end of the day, it's all those other things that they would do. No. The payroll has nothing to do. The product on the field has nothing to do with the asset. Absolutely nothing. The Cubs could suck ass. They could put out a single A team, and the Cubs and Wrigley Field, the asset is still worth $3+ billion. Again, the asset value improved 5% in 2020 with 0 fans, right? With COVID, the asset still increased. So
yeah,
you don't have to do anything.
For the market. It's like your house. It is very much like your house, actually, because
that's actually the exact analogy Tom Ricketts uses. So anyway,
yeah,
I'm not making this up. I'm telling you what Tom Ricketts himself would tell you.
Yeah, home values increase. You don't have to do anything for your home value to increase. You literally don't have to do anything. You don't even have to take care of your house for your home value to increase. And that's the same type of thing here. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just what the offseason ends up looking like is really the big question here is that we've got the CBA. There's a lot up in the air. The CBA is going to expire in December. And so, it's that in and of itself is going to be pretty ugly. And we won't know, anything about next season until obviously that gets dealt with. And then once that's dealt with, it's like, there's a lot of unknowns going into this season. And it's the Cubs are not in a good position right now, just generally speaking. Does it work itself out? Does it? I don't know, man. It's very difficult to say. But the one thing we do know is that Tom Ricketts is heavily invested in the success of the Cubs.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
That is true.
That is very true. So we'll see what ends up playing out with all this stuff. I mean, you could talk forever. The Cubs have their final homestand next week, which is, it's sad because baseball is going to be ending here in 2 weeks, man.
Yeah.
And but I'll tell you what, the playoffs are going to be very interesting. Normally there's like 1 or 2 teams that you think could definitely win it all, right? Like in 2016. It was basically the Cubs, right? I mean, pretty much the whole season, everyone.
Yeah, you knew
Cubs were the favorites. Gotcha.
Yeah, and, I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like it's pretty wide open.
It is,
but and I don't know, and I'm very interested, to see how this all shakes out with the wild cards, who gets hot at the right. I mean, I think this year, honestly, it is who's hot, who's pitching is high. That's why the Dodgers and Max Scherzer just pitching like he is. That worries me. That worries me a lot.
But it should be interesting. So the funny thing is, or maybe not ironic, but with the White Sox finally, kind of having a good team, it's like they picked the wrong year to be really good. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe they make it through. I don't know. We'll find out. So anyways, people, we would love to stay and do this for the rest of the day, but unfortunately, Evan has like a full day in front of him.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's happy hour time for me, but
Damn it.
That's kind of the way it goes.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry we took so long for this episode, but we'll try to be back next week. I'll be back in Civilization at some point next week. By Civilization,
what are you? You're a third world country.
Yeah.
They don't even speak English over there.
They don't speak English. So, anyways, until next week, probably we'll see you.
Cool.
Or as they say in France, au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.